partners Wellcrafted to spearhead both design and digital product development initiatives. For over 15 years, Damon has produced various digital applications and campaigns for world renowned companies and personalities. This award winning creative, self described tech head has worked with iconic companies including Home Depot, Locker USA, Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, Cummins Inc., and the Usher's New Look Foundation. Damon also sits on the board and works on various initiatives of the KEPRA Institute, a nonprofit organization focused on empowering marginalized voices and building community wealth in Indianapolis. Damon is also a proud husband of 20 years and father of 4 children ranging in age from 5 to 16. So with all that said, I'm going to pass it all over to Damon to get us started.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Sorry I'm late. I'm getting old, so I was using the wrong email. And I'm a designer, so designers are typically late. We practice a cameras on culture, do-rags, bonnets. I don't care. If you feel like it, please turn on your camera so I can see your beautiful faces. And one thing I like to do is kind of do a check-in question, and you can just leave information in the chat. We do a thing called color, which just kind of describes your vibe for the day. And then we do a thing called number. So from 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? 1 means I'm feeling like crap, and 10 means I'm feeling pretty good because it's Friday and we're about to have a good time on Friday. So number and color. I'm a sage green today, feeling pretty good. It's springtime, and I think I'm about an 8. Hopefully after this I'll be a 9 or a 10. But yeah, drop in the chat. Ooh, Carolina blue 6. Orange. Okay, we got a color palette starting. Any others in the chat? Heavy on 10. Any other ones? I'm trying to find a damn chat button. Excuse my language. All right. So we got 1. Miss Graham, turned her camera on. Thank you, Miss Graham. K Graham. Bossing up on everybody. Any other? All these UX UI designers, ain't nobody gonna show their face. It's all good. I'll be the only one on here. So I'll start real quickly with a kind of a brief kind of background in terms of how I got in design. Young kid, started at Heron School of Art Design. Actually, my mother went to Heron School of Art Design, and she had me in high school. So I remember being a little kid, just working on art and different projects. And so art and design has always been, thanks, George. You sound familiar. Art and design has always been kind of part of my life. I was that kid drawing, charging money for Bart Simpson sketches and Ninja Turtle sketches. And that kind of grew into, hey, I got to figure out how to get paid. And that turns into design, which inevitably started my UX, UI design journey. I'm an old head, so I started building websites in the 90s. 1999, I think I did my first website, and have been working on a number of websites since, and a number of different organizations. And so what I'm gonna try to share today is there's a whole bunch about UX UI design. I definitely want this open and interactive. So if you have any questions, I personally don't mind you blurting them out or stopping me. Hey, you're moving too fast, slow down. Or you can drop them in the chat and I'll try to answer those. But bear with me. I spend most of my time on the screen. So not usually in front of the camera, but I'll try to go through it real quickly. I'm not gonna waste any time like showing my designs and stuff. You heard our website. I could drop some links. But we pretty dope. We do some pretty dope stuff. We work with a lot of dope artists, a lot of dope brands, a lot of dope companies, et cetera, throughout the years. And I'll stop there because I'm not too my own horn. But what I'll do is kind of share the screen here. And if you have any questions again at any time, just let me know, because I'll just be a faucet and keep talking. But usually where I start is in Miro. So if you're familiar with Miro or not familiar with Miro, it's a collaboration tool. And I try to be as collaborative as possible in the design process, just because I know I don't know everything. And because I want to take control of the room, if that makes sense, by putting some of the onus in the ideation of this process in the hands of the stakeholders, consumers, et cetera, et cetera. All about collaboration. And I think if you start with collaboration, once you get to the part where you're introducing designs and comps, everybody's kind of bought in by that time. But for me, UX, UI flow is usually what I like to get towards. Of course, as a designer, as creatives, we like to spend most of our time in flow. And so, flow is another word for process, technical term. There are a number of steps. There's gobs of articles, there's all kind of books, there's different programs, there's different trains of thoughts, there's different best practices, blah, 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 blah. My biggest thing is I try to keep it to 3. If it's more than 3, let it be. So I broke it down into 3 steps: discovery, define, and design. And I'll just walk through those for anybody who has questions or needs some more information about it. And then I'll try to give some background and some of the tricks of the trade in terms of, ways to not necessarily cut corners, but to kind of speed and optimize things based on the budget, based on how much time you have in the discovery phase. I've been on projects where we have 3 days to design some comps, and I've been on projects where we have 3 months just to talk about wireframes. So it varies. Hopefully this is a tool and a resource. What I'm gonna do is drop this in the chat. You can use it. You can share it. I really don't care. And what I also did is provided some links in here to each one of the areas that I'm talking about. So if you have more questions or want to dig a little bit deeper, you can click on those links at any time. Question: why Miro over Figma for you? Not over Figma, in addition to Figma. I know a couple of designers who favor Figma over everything. Just curious to hear your feedback. Yeah, everything's done in Figma. I'm so old. I used to design comps in Photoshop, and it moved over to Adobe XD, and now it's Figma. So Figma is a tool that we use, and usually where we land, and I'll get to that. But we definitely start off with Miro first. It's just easy to use. There's other tools like that. I think Google's got a tool coming out, but Miro is just easy to use. I just invited y'all. Hopefully, I see some mouses moving around on the screen or something like that. But if not, it's a resource. Keep it and use it for later, or don't use it. This dude don't know what he's talking about. Whatever you want to go about it. So discovery. So the discovery phase kind of breaks down into 3 parts for me. And the thing that I'm trying to display or show here is that as a UX UI or even a product UX UI designer or even a product manager, you at least need to be familiar with these terms, even if you're not responsible for producing them, or it's not part of your agile developmental process in your agency or in your own practice. And so you don't have to know all of them, but being familiar with them. So when engineers and big wigs drop key terms, you ain't sitting there looking puzzled. So hopefully this saves y'all a lot of the confused faces that I've gone through over the years. But it's really just meant to be a quick start guide. And of course you can go more detail in this, and I'll stop explaining it and start walking through it. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Product vision, mood board, goal setting. In any project process, I usually start with a sketch. I like to fill the paper and pencil. You're not bound by any squares or shapes that Figma or Adobe Illustrator forces you to do. And you can kind of play with organic lines and things of that nature. I may sketch the consumer. I may sketch some app screens. I may just be taking notes and writing down logo concepts. It's kind of all these things that come into mind just so I can start to get comfortable with the product or the product vision, and the product meaning and what it means for me. I may not share these sketches with the client. They may be too premature. There are some cases where I'll just pull up a pad and pencil and sketch through the idea with the client. There's been a lot of opportunities where a napkin, or those things are true, uh, napkins or sketchbooks or whatever things of those nature, I'll sit and talk with the client and kind of sketch that out just to kind of get a feel. It also kind of ease them up too, because when you present something, put it on the board, people read it as set in stone concrete, like the Ten Commandments. And that's not the case. And so I try to use those tools like design and everything organic to try to bring to this process of developing this huge technical project that we're about to go through, just to kind of soften the mood. And so what we typically come out of after sketching, talking, ideating, I ask a number of questions. We come up with a product vision. I'm sure people are familiar about that, but the product vision is like the product manager or the designer's vision for the product. Product vision statements define why a product exists, what problems it solves, who it serves, and how it's different. They also serve as a framework for product teams to understand what they're working on and why it matters. And the product vision for me kind of it's the North Star for the project. If I need to defend the case on a particular button decision or screen colors or things of that nature, I try to come back to the product vision or why I did a certain number of steps in the user flow. I try to come back to the product vision, but it really sets the pace. Product visions come in all different kind of ways. Usually the best industry standard is to identify the product, target consumer, the statement or the need or opportunity with the product, product name, what category, what business is it in. So car sharing for one, Uber would be product category. The key benefits, why your product is competitively different, and being able to state those differentiations are going to be critical, because you want to play up on those differentiations when you're working on the design, from promotional copy to informational copy, et cetera, et cetera. There's a quick link to a product vision. I don't spend a terrible amount of time on product visions. They usually happen organically, and in most cases, the client or customer, partner, whatever, usually already has a product vision. And it's your job is to kind of pull that out, extract those things that we talked about, because those things are all going to make huge impact when you go into some of the more technical parts of the product, like product road mapping, functional requirements, et cetera, et cetera. I'll stop at the product vision right now. Are there any questions? I'll be honest with you. Most clients don't care about the product vision. They're going to change. They're going to try to change it 3 or 4 or 5 times during the process. And so you're going to have to be kind of adamant. You're going to have to be your own advocate as a designer, as a product leader, to kind of bring them back to the North Star. I call it feature scope. Hey, what if we do this? What if we do this? What if we add this? More than 3 key product features, let it be, especially for MVP, which is your most valuable product, and what you typically launch with in a startup or any kind of developmental phase. So I try to keep them to 3 key product features and make sure that those are the best. So quality over quantity. After that, I typically go to a mood board. As a designer, I'm sure you understand what a mood board is. It's really, how do I lay out the vibe? How do I start to play with colors? At this stage, I'm still not doing any wireframing. I'm not doing any user flows. I'm not doing any screen designs. The client wants me to. They want to start seeing stuff right now. But no, I'm not about to waste all that time doing all of those screen designs until we're on the same page about color, tone, vibe. And it's collaborative too. There have been some cases where I've had a client produce a mood board, particularly if they're super particular about the look and feel of their product, which most good product owners, CEOs are. But for me, I haven't been able to really do any design project without a mood board. They typically take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. There's a couple of tools you can use to do that. Canva has some mood board templates. Adobe Illustrator has some mood board templates. You can even do mood board templates in Figma. I've seen a couple, but at this phase, I'm just really trying to get a feel of what the customer is comfortable with. If I show chartreuse or fuchsia on the website, do they hate that color? I don't know. So a mood board is a thing that usually helps us kind of go through that process in terms of what they're comfortable with from a style perspective. And in most cases, I usually present 2 to 3 mood boards. And then those mood boards, I may even include other designs from other websites that I think look good or that are competitors to kind of get a sense of what they do and don't like. So you are starting to do some product discovery in the mood board, but you, again, this whole discovery phase, we try to keep it as loose and light as possible, because we know as we get into defining the product, we're going to get more narrow in and focus on this or that overall. Any questions on mood board? Show of hands, who loves mood boards more than screen designs? Nobody? I love mood boards more than screen designs because you really get to dream, take the vision, and make it. It's kind of the first real concrete artifact of this product that you're producing. All right. After that, we usually start sitting down and goal setting. And so people may call these things design sprints, things of that nature. One of the big things that we use from a goal setting perspective is what we call a Moscow matrix, or it may be called the Moscow method. Must, should, could, won't. And I've even seen some where they have another W for wish. I wish this was in the product. So for MVP, you get the post-it notes. Another reason why I love Miro, you can do the post-it notes on Miro, set it up, invite your team to collaborate on it, and start to get feedback, comment back and forth. But essentially, is pretty straightforward in terms of the matrix. What must the product have? What features must be included? What features should be included, but don't necessarily have to. We want to try to push for those features in the launch of it, but if they don't make it, we'll put them on version 2. What are some of the things that we think will make the product more beneficial down the road? So a lot of things that come out of could and should may go on your product roadmap. So once you launch, you have these new features, you'll come back and start to go through the process to define those features. And then won't, things that we like in the product, but they won't be included in that. Either we don't have enough budget, we don't have the technical team, or we don't have enough time to get it done by the launch of a particular date. Must, should, could, won't. And we use these a lot with our clients at Wellcrafted on the digital side. It really helps slow them down, and it helps us force them to prioritize, and it helps us keep them accountable for the product features and things that we're going to add to the product down the road. And again, it's another collaboration tool, and it provides an opportunity for everybody to get feedback and, more importantly, take ownership in the development process, so that it's not all on your hands as this magic creative person that's supposed to just take their idea and produce this dynamic app design. Any questions at this point? Drop them in the chat. I can't see everybody on here, but hopefully this is informative. And I like a lot of positive reinforcement. So, what are you talking about? Smiley faces. I know it's Friday afternoon, so but still, just provide questions or comments, feedback in the chat as we go through. So again, in the discovery phase, we're talking about product vision. We define the product vision. We define the mood board. What's the kind of look and feel as I move forward? And then we do some early goal setting, which then informs us down the road, going into more detail about the product and who we're serving with the product. During this phase, some of the tools that I'm using, like I talked about, I'm sketching wireframes, post-it notes. I'm using Miro. I'm in Canva doing mood boards, or I'm in Figma doing mood boards. It's pretty straightforward. Sweet. Um, so the next phase is define. And in define, we really go into the details. In define, you may find the lead devs, system architects, programmers coming in, and all the engineers are saying, can't do this, can't do that, blah, 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 blah. And so as a product leader, as a designer, I thrive on that because it's an opportunity to discover something new. But it is a great way to get their feedback and to better understand the product from a technical standpoint. And then you also use this opportunity to communicate the technical requirements, functional requirements to the client as well. And so we're really defining what the product is, how it, how it works, how it operates, what are the main call to actions, et cetera, et cetera. Does it need to be responsive? What platforms is it on? All those things. It gets very technical in the define process. And so I try to ask as many questions as possible. I really feel like in this define process, there are no dumb questions. And it is my job as a UX UI designer or a product leader to try to understand the technical side of product development as best as possible. And that's really hard. I went to IPS and art school, so but we make it work. We make things happen. So really 2 steps here, but they are very involved steps. As a product lead or designer, you're usually charged with not coming up with the user personas, but essentially identifying those, laying those out, and communicating those to the larger team. A user persona is a representation of your customers. It represents your target audience who may belong to various audience segments. Personas are designed to identify what these people need from your product or service. It answers the questions about your ideal customer. What do they need? What are their goals? How do they behave with similar products? How will your product solve their needs? There are a lot of layouts for user personas. They get really involved, a lot of charts, Nielsen data, et cetera, et cetera. I found a great tool that's helped me out is a tool called FlowMap. It's not too expensive. And they help me as the product leader kind of document all this in one centralized location. And so FlowMap, this user persona right here is a user persona pulled out of FlowMap. And so you get things, demographic information, favorite brands, their wants and needs and their frustrations, both in that industry that you're making the product for, and any frustrations or issues that they're running into with other products or competitive products in that same industry. A lot of times here you'll have your market research, market surveys going on. You may even have Facebook personas that are typically used for like pay-per-clicks. That's a good way to kind of come up with personas and identify. And it's also a good way to kind of research as well too. You can kind of click on some of those users and identify what they are, where they're using. But in the persona, you're really trying to identify kind of that key customer or customers and their need states for the product and how you're going to address those need states with the product. You're also looking at touch points for that particular persona. So how are they engaging? Did they come to your app off an Instagram ad, or did they see a billboard and went to the app store and download it? All those different channels, et cetera, that they frequent, that they use where they're at, are typically in user personas. And in most cases, I've had somewhere between 3 to 5 different user persona types. And in some cases, user personas can transfer into user roles. Not all the time, but for some typical basic apps, you can change those user personas. And as a designer, you start to have kind of the lead on that in terms of how you're naming those persona types, what they do, and really just laying out that information for the customer. In this aspect, you're kind of thinking for the customer. These are the user personas. These are the different roles on the platform. And during that phase, you also bring in the dev team too. But I'll stop there with user personas. These aren't used a lot in some of the projects that we have when we try to request it as much as possible, but it's another design tool that helps the designer think and communicate where they're going with the product. But a lot of times you may have to throw it out the window based on timeline and things of that nature overall. User flows. Uh, User flows are typically where I do start to get into some of the design and layout. I try to keep my user flows as simple and clean as possible. User flows helps you create an intuitive user experience. Your users can move through your platform with ease and gives users an easy way into understanding the flow of the app. User flow charts help you figure out what is working and what isn't. Mapping out user flow will give you the insights you need to improve the overall UX design of your app. Finally, user flows are so useful for all interface and web design that they are the ideal way to showcase what is being created or in progress to visualize solutions to your larger team. As the product lead, product design lead, in most cases, I spend a lot of time in Miro putting together user flows with the dev team, having the client look at them, give feedback, and you really try to look at the system. You try to look at it from a system overview. And what I typically do is I'll say, here's our user persona. What are the top 3 things we need them to do on the website? Sign up, register for a workshop, pay for the workshop. That's all I'm focused on the user flows. I'm not doing copyright at the bottom of the screen. It's just circles, squares, and buttons. And within that, you'll be able to show how a user travels through your platform or how you intend for them to travel through your platform. You'll also identify too where are the gaps in the system or the gaps in the screen inventory that we haven't thought about. How do we get from sign up to purchase? It's not going to be 3 screens. It's probably going to be a long litany of screens, 3 different flows, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I see a question. Do you only use your UX UI background with websites, or do you use it in architecture designs too? Do I use my UX? No. I got the question. I didn't understand the question. UX UI, that's all me. That came from somewhere. My mama, my daddy, I don't know. The architectural, I just had to learn that just by failing. And particularly as an entrepreneur who once owned a digital practice and now works in one, we tend to focus more on the creative side now. If you don't understand the architecture, you won't understand how you're losing money on projects. If the architecture is not understood and not developed up front, you will waste time and money. And so it behooves you as part of the product team or product owner to understand that part of it. You don't have to understand. I still don't know what Hadoop means or Hadoop or whatever it's called, but I do understand the system flow, data inputs, where's information put in place, where is it stored, how is it saved, can they download, can they sign up? You want to start to understand those parts of it from a technical standpoint. There are courses for it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not necessarily required for a UX UI designer. If you want to be a product leader, you better know it. So great question. I like to learn, so the architecture side is even something that I'm still learning. And will continue to learn because different systems change, different technologies. That's part of the excitement about it as well too. Great question. So user flows are kind of the core base of it. I'll show one real quick. Hopefully I don't get sued. So for example, we have an app coming up, and these are what I would consider user flows. They don't get too technical, but they are starting to incorporate some of the color schemes, elements that the customer is going to see in the design later on. So you do have an opportunity to kind of make them flashy. I've seen low fidelity ones like what Darhead puts together. couple squares and some line, and I've seen some that look like finalized the screen design comps on the screen. I tend to like these because I can move faster. I can add graphics, etc., etc. And you can kind of see how certain things on these user flows are critical. So I show all of the connections, all of the action buttons. Where do they point to? I point those out and make sure that it kind of communicates how a customer or persona is going to travel through your platform. Again, some other docs and deliverables. So the things in bold are things that you may be asked to produce as a UX UI designer. I've been asked to produce these things a couple times and was like, what is that? I had to figure it out. But I do think hopefully this is a quick guide to help you with that. And in most cases, you're either have these documents created from the product lead, an engineer on the team, or the architectural I'm drawing a blank. The AI guy, the architect, chief architect, or an additional designer. But I mean, this additional developer. But it does help for you to know how to put these things together as well, particularly if you're a startup and trying to get that money. Feature tree, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of like a family tree, but it just branches out all of the features. There's a link to that in that as well. Customer journey maps kind of identifies how a customer gets to the end result of utilizing your app or product. So awareness, engagement, information, confirmation, all those kind of words. And then finally, call to action and customer acquisition. So there's a link to that. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We don't do a lot of customer journey maps. A lot of our clients kind of already are in business and we're just helping improve their product. But there are some startups that we work with that have no clue how somebody's going to find their app or get to their product and interface with their product. And so it helps to know what a customer journey map is. A user story mapping is a little bit different. I kind of liken it to user flows. I do think user flows can help with story mapping. Some designers think differently. But story mapping is basically how a user travels through your platform. And so you can come out of there with stories, epics, blah, 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 blah. That may be a little bit old school. I don't know if that's changed. Non-functional requirements versus functional specifications. So I put non-functional requirements in bold because as a designer, you should have some understanding of what that user is supposed to do, what actions they're supposed to take, and how the system is supposed to respond to their actions on each particular screen in the flow. And so, for example, if user clicks registration button, registration window pops up. That's a non-functional requirement. What the dev team will do is take those non-functional requirements and make them functional specifications. Bunch of code, bunch of jibber jabber. All I really need to know out of that from a product lead standpoint is what's the effort? Is it a huge effort? Out of 1 to 5, is it going to take a lot of our team to build it? What's the priority of it? Out of 1 to 5, is it a top priority 1 or is it a lower priority? And how many hours is it going to take? What's the estimate? What's the effort estimate on it? And so that's how you get to your project plan. So I tend to be of the school of thought that the product leader can lead functional specifications and requirements through non-functional requirements if the project provides that much time. And so being able to understand all the elements on the screen, how they're supposed to operate and what this screen is supposed to do for each user role is something that I recommend UX UI designers to understand and be able to communicate. And there's a link there as well that talks about non-functional versus functional, and then some examples as well too. System architect diagram, usually done by the lead architect, system architect. In a lot of ways, it's like a user flow, but they talk about more high level how the system operates, web server, data, functions, save features, etc., etc. It really gets super complex and detailed, but it does inform you once you kind of walk through that with the developer and get questions answered. Another thing that I show user flow diagrams. They're also referred to as user flow charts. And you see the example there, but there's a link. Key screen inventory. One of the things that is really critical in my process is identifying the key screen inventory. So we may have 50 screens in this flow, but there are a few key screens from a design perspective that may have all the elements that are in additional pages or secondary pages. And focusing in on those key screens will allow you to kind of build for most of the interface without having to go through every single screen and laying it out. Like, it takes way too much time. And so I definitely like to identify key screen inventory, and that's usually where my scope of work on the design side comes out of. Now, if we've done the key screens and come back and need to do some other screens, that's fine, but we've already got a bulk of design elements, style cues, fonts, etc., to pull from. So out the gate, I'm not trying to design every screen before I hand stuff over to you, because dev is greedy and they want to work. So out of a 20 screen, I may identify the 3 main key screens: home screen, sign up, registration, user profile screen, user profile edit, etc., focusing on those screens, both from a wireframe perspective, non-functional requirements perspective, and from a design perspective.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'll come off screen. So for example, what I call it is a happy path. So could you send over like a happy path to them? Like, you say your team decide what's like, you have your 20 screens, but there's one main goal you want to focus on for dev to kind of see. Is that something you would send, like another example of what you would send into them? So it may have, yeah.
And to answer, that's a great question. Thanks for turning your camera on. I'll let it orange. For me, the user flow is the happy screen. Okay. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm just kind of, for lack of a better word, just old and don't, hey, this is what we're producing. This is where the conversation is going to start. And let me pull up one. So, for example, that's not a good example. I'll go here. This is a sign up process flow for one of our customers. And all the information is detailed in there. But you'll see I spent kind of a little bit more time on layout positioning of those critical screens to make those stand out. That's usually where they're going to focus a lot of their time. But hopefully that answers your question. If not, ask for more.
No, you're good. Thank you.
No problem. Good question. Keep them coming. And then customer research. So I think I talked about that earlier. Surveys, data. A lot of clients that we have kind of already have a real great understanding of their client. And these are all tools that you'll use to better understand the client, learn more about the client. Learn more about the persona and who you're building the app for. And any customer research will help inform your personas that you present. And I found with personas, it usually just makes the customer feel better. Like, I know what I'm doing. I show the persona once and I'm like, oh yeah. And more so, it's more of a marketing tool. So if there's any marketing people in that room, they'll want to conversate about that more, and which is a good thing because you want them involved as well too. And so user personas, user flows, again, these are all tools that you can use in Miro to make this process a collaborative process. And a lot of times it helps slow the project down because we move at the customer speed. I'm saying that, but that's like super important as a product lead, because you playing chess in that room with that customer and with your boss too. And so you're a worker, but you want to own it, if that makes sense. And so a tool like Miro versus them just typing up a bunch of stuff in Google Docs and sending it to you and saying, here, design this. We don't F with that. So we try to keep it as collaborative as possible. And I'll stop there. Before Rachel gets me for getting on my horse. And so some of the tools that we may use during the define process, again, I'm using Miro. You saw some of those flows. Flow Map is a great tool as well. Google Sheets. We use Google Sheets because that's where we do our project task breakdown. And Google Docs is where a lot of clients, in some cases, they may have a product leader on their team, and they're giving you kind of that high level non-functional requirements. And sometimes they do include functional requirements in that document as well. We also use tools like Notion here at Wellcrafted. We use ClickUp, which is a great Kanban tool. You can kind of set it up any kind of way you want to. And at Artistry, we use Trello, which does the same thing. So whatever helps you organize the process steps and the statuses is good, and it helps you communicate the project. Any questions at this point? 12:48. Man, I'm talking a lot. George Nunez, you listening?
All right, yes, cool. Sir. Loud and clear. I'm
yes,
with
sir.
You, bro.
I like that hat, bro.
Appreciate it, friend. You know, I had to rep my town, I had to rep my city.
I ain't mad at it. So the last phase, and notice this is the last phase. Like, I'm a designer. I love to just get started, but I'm not designing until a month in, 2 months in, because it's gonna save me headache. And that's very important. The client's gonna want you to start designing some stuff. I need to understand what I'm designing for, respect my position, and you got to give that pushback, primarily as minority, BIPOC, underrepresented people in those spaces. Usually me and Daria are the only two brothers in the room. Rachel in that same aspect as well, and I'm sure that's the same for y'all. So you have these tools to reinforce your position and your agency in that space. Otherwise, they'll have you putting together some BS, and that's not what you want to do. That's not your reputation. That's not the reputation that you want to build. So take a lot of ownership in that aspect of it and trying to spearhead. That may just be my style too. I think Rachel called me Hulk the other day. That's why I put on green for today. Anyway, design. So in design, I do consider wireframes part of design. Style guides and then screen comps. I'm sure y'all know about this. This is what most of the UX UI colleges focus on. None of this strategic stuff. So hopefully strategic stuff helps, but we finally get to the fun part, which is design. Wireframes are important. If you don't know what a wireframe is, there's a link. One of the reasons they're important is without them let me just read it because I'm wireframes are important for multiple reasons. One of them would be that the wireframes focus on functionality, behavior, and priority of content. I'm sure people heard above the fold, call to action buttons, headlines, call out. Another word may be masthead, header, footer, logo, all those things. You want to kind of establish the positioning of that. Pretty straightforward. Once you have those things established, designing the product becomes a lot easier. We do most of our wireframes in Figma, but again, we drop them in Miro so that the client can come back, give feedback on them, and we have this communication chain. We own Miro, so if you're coming in here, you're gonna do what we tell you to do from the design team. And so Miro is a great tool, even though I didn't do this, Ari, my partner designed these comps. Actually, I played a little bit on this one, but you see how wireframes go to user flows go to design comps. In this case, we spent a little bit more time because the client didn't necessarily have a huge budget, we spent a little bit more time on fleshing out the details and the user flows and considered those wireframes and then started to the design process. But you'll typically have user flows, wireframe, and design comps. Now on wireframes, you can go low fidelity, you can go mid fidelity, you can go high fidelity. I don't know if everybody knows Devin McHale used to work with us. That dude can churn out some wireframes and it looks like they're ready to go live. And so it's just based on what you're comfortable with. If you have more time, you want to get quick ideas out in the user flow, you can keep your user flows and wireframes really simple. Once you get closer to design, you definitely want to put more detail in them. You may not be putting actual content or copy, but you'll put spaces for that. Hey, here's where the file upload block goes or file upload module goes. And another thing that we use wireframes for is for placement and layout of elements and functional elements on the screen. And so there's a lot of times where I'll spend a lot of time on the wireframes, making sure that they're perfect because I know I'm not about to design the screen comps. I'm gonna hand it over to another designer. Or in some cases, if there's not a lot of room in the budget, I may just do a style guide, wireframes, and then hand those over to the dev team to build out. And so there's different ways you can go about doing it based on how your process flows or what works for you. And speaking of style guides are a design and development tool that brings cohesion to a digital product's user interface and experience at their core. They record all the design elements and interactions that occur within the product. There's crucial UI components such as buttons, typography, color navigation, menus, etc. We already been on that. We started doing colors with mood boards. So we're answering these questions in a more organic process that lends itself to how we flow and how we work as a designer. But style guides as a development tool are really critical because I could spend 3 weeks doing key screen inventory or 3 days doing style guides and a couple more days doing wireframes, and then I push it over to the dev team. And then last but not least, everybody's favorite. If you have a link to your work, we always looking for fresh, dope talent. I see it on here already. So please, if I don't get anything, drop your contact in the chat so we can reach out to you. And if we didn't reach out, it don't mean you suck. It just means we move slow. So please drop it in the chat. Link to a website, IG page, LinkedIn profile, whatever. I'll drop in our link as well too. So you can see some of the work that we've done. What is that? Oh, okay. So last but not least, UI screen comps. To use an analogy from automobile design, wireframes are like early internal concept pencil sketches of a new vehicle idea, and the comps are like the finished concept renderings of the vehicle that might be published in a magazine or article. And so we try to have our screen comps pixel perfect. And a lot of times in Figma, you can do walkthrough demos just off of your screen comps. And we do that for a lot of our startups. They're still in fundraise mode, or a lot of our product teams. We're trying to come up with a quick feature or epic. And we'll just design it out, demo it out, share that with the client so they can share it and get more feedback before we even start developing. A composition, in simple terms, is an aggregation of the various distinct elements of design to make up a whole and complete design. For UI, the focus being on the functional aspects of the site, the call to action, and informative elements of the platform or website. Here's some of our work in Figma. We talk about screen comps, things that we do. We work with a golf app company. So we do some cool stuff. I'm not trying to show everything because Rachel's gonna get me.
I got a question. I got a couple questions for you. So
okay, shoot.
So the first thing is I added you on LinkedIn and sent you a request. The second thing is I posted my product newsletter I started a product newsletter called Product Gems, where literally just give game to people in regards to product and how they could use tips, tools, and tricks to apply it in their day-to-day work or their life routines. Um, the other thing I was going to ask was, first thing is, like, what is your communication style like between product managers and dev and engineer folks? That's my first question. And second, I spoke with a like designer or a few designers, and like they always say this constant thing about, design is about perspective. Like there's no like real right or wrong to how you go about designing
Awesome.
or creating a product. So like want to hear your perspective on like your thoughts when it comes to design and how you go about creating your designs. I know you gave like a layout or framework of like, yeah, I
Yeah.
sketched this or I do this
Mhm.
before I do the frameworks, but like what are your overall thoughts about design?
My overall thoughts about design. I'll start with that one first. Hmm, that's a good question. My overall perspective about design is almost tied to my purpose in life. So I take design really important. It's a gift that God bless me, bless y'all with. Most people don't have the hand-eye coordination to visualize something out of nothing. So that is a power. And you happen to have spent the amount of time, put your 10,000 hours in to have mastery over that particular skill set. And there's a certain responsibility that comes with it. Um, and I'm sensitive about my ish, right? And I think everybody is. As I've gotten older, it's easier for me to not really care about how uh, people perceive the design. There have been some things that I thought were super ugly, but they converted real quick, and the entrepreneur went and made a lot of money, and then they came back and put a nice design polish on top of it. And so for me, design, like you said, is subjective. So I know that out the gate. That's why things and to avoid me presenting these great designs that I spend a lot of hours in at the end, somebody saying, "Oh, I hate that orange." That's why I do the mood boards and everything at the beginning, to save me that headache of trying to guess what these people would like to see from my brain. There's no way you're going to figure that out. And so I try to remove all of that emotion in it. Hopefully that answers the question. And it took some time, fresh out of our school, 20s and 30s. I was like, nah, this is the best design ever. I'm about to win some awards, blah, 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 blah. And it really is a collaborative effort. And me knowing that I come in and I don't have to have all the answers from a layout perspective, and that the people on the team do have perspective that I need to incorporate, it makes it a lot easier for me to do it. I just try to control when they do it. Don't do it at the end when we about to push stuff to the developers, because it's gonna cost you more and it's gonna cost you more hours. Uh, I try to do it at the beginning and get all those things laid out in the mood board and the wireframes and the flows. I know it's 1 o'clock. I answered the last question. Design versus dev. You guys will always hate each other, but that's a good thing. I think conflict, as long as you can resolve it and be respectful of each other, keeps the team engaged, and it's a great way for learning. It's also a great way for getting to understand each other better. Um, I do think the more that you understand dev, the better you'll be, the better it will make your designs. You'll be building things quicker and faster that the design team, that the dev team loves. Um, and so there'll always be that rub. I don't think they're counter to each other. And I sometimes I look forward to the conflict, because if you go through it adequately, both of you guys or both teams get a better understanding of how to move forward, and it makes the next project that much better coming around. Hopefully, I answered your question. Great questions. These are all good questions.
No, no,
Um,
no, it's definitely a good question. And last question, if you got time, I promise I'm done. I
no
just
problem.
put out 3 AI websites. Like, what are your thoughts on AI and how you think it'll affect the design space? Like, they're creating these AI design tools, I guess, to accelerate the process. So what's your overall thoughts of like design and AI?
That's a good one. That's another good question. I've toured it, played around with it. Um, I'm tripping. Sorry about that.
And I put three different AI design websites in the chat too.
Okay, I'll make sure I click on those. AI is here. I mean, it's taking over. I'm using Chat GP, whatever it's called, to do research documents.
Yeah, that chat GPT is different.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm using, left and right. So I think it's just all part of the tools. Like I said, the first website I did, I was literally like splicing up stuff, and it's what was called Dreamweaver. I don't know if people know that anymore, but splicing up stuff in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then trying to put some HTML behind it and some CSS on it. So the technology is always going to change, and so you just kind of have to be agile and flexible with the technology. One thing that did come about is that they can't consider AI as copyright material, and so you do have some onus from an IP standpoint that if it's from your hands, you're still on it. So in that aspect, my biggest concern from a macro level was, is AI going to remove the power of creative intellectual property? I don't see that happening, so I mess with it. You know what I mean? If it's a tool that's going to optimize and speed things further, I mess with it. If you coverage, you ain't got to be worried about the mark of the beast. That makes sense. So I'm good with AI. I'll stop there. Great question. Any more questions? I'm not in a rush. I know it's 1:03, but I'm here to answer any questions. Cool. No more questions. I'm gonna drop this link in the chat. And then I'm also gonna find my Calendly. Oh no! If you want to talk to me, go to Mentors of Color. I'm on there. I love to chat and talk about AI and all those kind of cool things. I'm gonna try to copy all these links so that I can follow up with everybody. But that's it. If the board is helpful, please let me know. Leave a comment, share it, use it. Suggest some things to add to it. Like I said, I left out a whole bunch. We'd have been up here forever and just kept it to discovery, define, and design. But that's it. Appreciate y'all. Rachel?
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Go. Did you jump off already? Just dropping my calendar in the chat. Right, so I'm gonna copy all these links before we close. Oh, there's a transcript, right, for this? Is Rachel gone?
I think so.
Hey, Miss Allen, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good. I'm about to head off of here too. But I did send you a LinkedIn request as well.
Okay, I'll check out for it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. All righty.
Baby.